Most people are using AI right now, but are using it badly. They're using it confidently, but in some industries, confidence without expertise costs someone their entire plan. Welcome back to the Funnel Vision. I am Jenny, and today I'm sitting down with Ankita Chopra, founder of Kritin Global. And this episode is brought to you by Hera Digital, where we help small to mid-sized businesses put AI to work in the parts of the business that actually move revenue. Ankita has spent 3 years building an immigration and education strategy firm in a market that mostly sells paperwork. Her clients stay with her for years, not just weeks. And she's doing all of it while watching those same clients turn up with advice from AI that has given them. Ankita, thanks for coming onto the podcast today.
Hi, Jenny. How are you doing? Thank you for having me too. I think that's a very interesting introduction, and that is summarizing my life, really. So thanks for having me here today.
No worries. We actually just spoke about this, but what you do in your industry is completely new to our podcast and a little sidesteppy to what we normally talk about on this podcast. But I think having a completely different set of insights in a different industry, talking about the same topic is really going to bring some visibility across how AI is actually being implemented in very particular industries such as yourselves. But I'd like to sort of start a few steps back and understanding, how did you get to immigration in the first place?
That's a question I get asked all the time. So I hold 2 degrees in accounting and commerce, right? That's just what my background is. And I've worked as a finance manager as well at a law firm. So I've seen all of this happen, and being an immigrant myself, I've gone through this entire journey of trying to find an institution and then trying to sort out your visa. And then you've seen that happen, right? And I am a very curious person by nature. So you can't just tell me that we're going to go from point A to point B. I want to understand what we're doing because it's my life, right? So I was a finance manager at this law firm, and then I just realized that maybe my life is just beyond the books and the P&L and the financials. So I started working at an institution and dealt with their most complex department, which was admissions. So I was looking after admissions and marketing for international education. So we would bring students from everywhere in the world, be it Kenya, South Asia, subcontinent, South America, all of that. So that gave me a great exposure that I couldn't really understand from my point of view, because every migrant is coming to a different country with a different set of experiences. So, but I knew that I understood the journey, and I'm someone who's always looking into finding the gaps and trying to see how I can really make things simpler. So that after I left that job, it was just like me trying to find what did I want to do. And I was like, well, what's the next best step for me? And then I worked as an independent consultant for a while just to gain some more experience from different providers and agents and providing advisory services. And then I realized that maybe I should, because to give migration advice, you need to be a licensed migration agent. And then I thought, okay, let me just do this because I understand law, but I also understand the nitty-gritties of it. So it was quite interesting for me to take on that course, which I hadn't actually thought of. So it wasn't like I was planning from, accounting coming into migration. It just happened because I could see that there was so many people out there, but there were so many gaps still there, right? And then people would still be so lost. So I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and this is what we're going to build in. So I guess that's how I landed in migration, and here I am.
It's funny because your journey is what I call the entrepreneur recipe. And a lot of people that I speak to on the podcast have a similar journey where we've worked for corporate. We know we don't want to do that long term. We go out to consulting because we're not exactly sure what we want to do just yet. And then we finally land somewhere 2 or 3 years later. Then you're like, wait, how did I get here? And I think it's fascinating to actually understand how you got there. And to be fair, outside of your personal experience from the migration standpoint, it is a very niche industry to get into. And I think from my little experience in the past, it can be very transactional. But from what you said from our initial conversation is you've sort of moved away from that transactional approach. And that means that retention is super high. But it's how do you get to that point? How did you get to the point of, hey, I don't want my relationship with my clients to be transactional. They just come, get their visa, and then they kind of disappear. Because if it's not managed, it could very well just continue being a transactional. But at what point did you decide that I don't want my business to be transactional like everybody else's?
Okay. Very interesting question, actually. See, I have always believed in maintaining a relationship, making a relationship, maintaining a relationship. And I am not someone who thinks of a short term. So you don't go and just, do something. There's a reason why you do what you do. And that's the belief I hold. So when I got that job as well with that institution, I knew and I was very upfront from the beginning that, I'm going to work with you for 2 years because that's the exposure I want for myself. And then I can make a more informed decision for myself whether I wanted to continue in that industry. And from the retention point of view, you've got to understand that any decision or any visa you apply is not just for the sake of it. There's steps to it. So when I sit with my clients, I'm not like, hey, this is what you want and this is what we provide, versus we sit. I would sit with them, understand in terms of what they want to achieve. So I usually give this analogy quite often. Like if you go to a doctor, if you tell them that you've got a headache, he's not going to start giving you prescription of something. He's going to go and ask you about what happened, about your history, about some tests that he's going to ask you to do. And that's just how I work with my clients. So I understand that this is where we are and this is where we want to be. Now, how do we get there? And if people sort of understand that strategy and they trust you, that's the most important thing, because, you've got to let that person who's dealing your case, you've got to be able to trust them. And if they can do that, then it's much easier to build and that retain that relationship. Versus if you're just coming in and saying, hey, this is what I want to do. And you like, okay, let me just process the documentation. Here's your visa. Thank you very much. That's not my approach. Because I feel that you don't build advocates like that. You don't build a business like that. That's just, I think I read some study. There's like 70% more expensive to acquire new clients, than to retain your current ones. And I don't look at them as clients. I put myself in shoes of whether it's a student or it's an employer or, anyone, and try to understand what this person really wants. And then work out a strategy based on what their goals are, not what my goals are. So it's not a transactional relationship. It's essentially solving a problem for them and the way that works for them the best. So I guess that's just what I followed, and it's been well so far.
I think there's something beautiful in actually it being a derivative of your own personal experience, because you intimately know what that looks and feels like. And then in a weird way, where the experiences are designed to tell us what not to do rather than what to do. And you can only know that if you've actually gone through that experience. And when I look at some of the public listed stuff about Kritin, and it's very much more focused on the educational piece, because when we're dealing about visas and immigration, generally, like you mentioned to me, they think that they know based on what ChatGPT had told them prior to coming to you. And then now you have to re-educate them and unlearn what ChatGPT has told them, because that's all they know. That's what they come to you with. And that's the skeleton of what the basis of their understanding. So it's not even just education for them in the long run, but it's education right now as to how this process actually works. But what stands out for me in what you do is the actual level of care, because just by the way that you explain your process to me, I can tell and feel that that's how people come to trust you, because you care, because you know what it feels like, right? Yeah. And I think there's something beautiful about that. And now, I mean, when you looked at the immigration market, when you entered it at the time, did you feel like something was missing that you decided to build that gap and have essentially done so with Kritin?
Yes and no. So there's currently, I think, 5,000 migration agents registered. And there's, I don't even know how many lawyers there. But so I wouldn't say there was gap in terms of advice. It was there. But then the trust in our industry was diminishing. Because as you said, it had become more transactional. So people, especially with ChatGPT and AI coming into the picture, people thought that they were able to make that professional calls by themselves because AI had told them that. So when I got into migration, it was essentially me, even till date. I tell my clients when they send me a long email, and I know it's not been drafted by them, it's drafted by AI. And I always say to them that, AI is not that smart. It is, but it doesn't always give you the right answers. So I guess it's been an interesting journey for me, because the advice has always been there, but that trust factor was diminishing. And as you said, and rightly pointed, that we do care. We at Kritin say that, any client comes to us, whether it's, a $200 worth or $2 million worth, whatever it is, they get the same level of service from us because we care about and we're responsible for the advice we're giving. So as best practice, we try to understand their level of knowledge, because sometimes, some employers have dealt with the migration stuff in the past. So they've got a great knowledge, but they've got some things that they need to be worked out. And that's what we understand. So I think for me, it's essentially been trying to build that trust again in the profession and in the industry, versus trying to just acquire clients for the sake of it. Because my principle has never been, I never say that, we're the cheapest, but I always say that, if you work with us, you'll know why we do what we do, and you'll stay with us, because that's just our, style of business, right? So it's never about trying to give you advice, but it's also about trying to make a difference to people's lives. And that's the kind of principle I've always lived with. I feel that any person you meet, you should be able to leave them with a positive impact, not just professionally and personally as well. So when I'm dealing with people's lives and their careers, their families, their future, their visas, and, their business strategies, it's very important for us to leave a positive impact. Whether we're able to get them a positive outcome 100%, no. The decision doesn't rest with us. But at least they know how hard we've worked to get there. And that's just what we work with. That's the differentiating, factor that we are able to provide our clients, that we care. At the same time, we try our best to give a positive impact. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in the total hour that we've known each other, it oozes out of you. Like, I think if I was coming in to apply for a visa, or if I wanted to talk to you about it, I feel super warm talking to you, because I feel like you, like, people say like, oh, I feel like you care, but I feel like you genuinely do care, because if we dial it back a couple of steps, you are dealing with someone's whole livelihood, whether that be just for right now, 5 years from now, but there's a reason why people come back to you. And I think that is from that warmth and from that nurturing perspective as a priority over everything else. And it shows. And I hope that people who watch this episode can feel that too. So anytime you want to swing by our office, because everyone can always do with more warmth, especially in winter. But I think there's people out there that are equally in it to grow the business aggressively, and there's people in it to grow the business intentfully, and there's a massive difference between the two. And you can tell straight off the rip who we talk to on these podcasts, who are the either or the or, right? So it's nice, but it's nice you give a completely different insight into the immigration industry as a whole. So the industry has got to give you some credit for that.
Thank you. That's a great compliment. I take that, definitely. And look, I think I am quite an empathetic person. I always believe in trying to be kind. So yes, we want to grow the business. There's no doubts about it. I'm quite ambitious for sure. But at the same time, I've got to see that the journey that we take on is very important, and it's not a paper that we're working with. We're working with people's lives. They've spent millions of, I don't know, sometimes amount of money they've spent, the time they've spent, they've got so much hope, and they're coming to you with that hope. And I guess that's a responsibility that you take on as an individual, as a human being, I believe. Yeah.
But then you added a certain layer of like nurturing to that process, and that just small piece of action or care can change someone's experience into trying to get into Australia or out of Australia quite vastly different, right? And people are you're the first instance of the first representation of what that process may or may not look like. So it's a lot of responsibility, actually.
Yeah. Definitely. Look, sometimes, I deal with cases. I know currently we have this case with this lady who left Australia 16 years ago, and she wants to come back. And when I heard her story, it was quite, she had illness in the family and, all of that. And now she wants to come back because her kids is in a uni here. And so we were dealing with that. And it's just like, okay, how do I make her experience the smoothest, given that what she's been through and what we're trying to do for her. So I guess it's very important to care, and it's without that, I think there's no point, because we're dealing with so much, and at the same time we've got to add that we have to go extra mile. So I always tell my clients, you leave the dirty work to me, as long as you give me what I ask for.
When I ask for it.
When I ask for it. Figured. So then they're like, okay, no problem.
Yeah. We all know what that feels like when we're waiting on clients to return information to us. That would be a whole separate podcast, I think, and that would just be rant based only.
Yeah. Especially with this multi-channels. You've got WhatsApp, you've got Instagram, you've got Facebook. Sometimes I get clients messaging me at 2 a.m. in the morning and I'm like, oh wow, that's great.
Boundaries, man.
That's amazing. Nah, I guess that word just doesn't exist. Nah.
Not for your industry, I don't think.
No.
I just tell them, you can message me all you want. I'm just not going to reply at certain times. That's all. And that's just the nature of the fact. I say that, but I end up replying anyway. I know.
You've got to take that call, right? If someone's at the airport and you're getting their visa cancelled, of course you've got to reply and sort it out for them. But if someone just wants to have a chat, you can't just be like, hey, yo, mate, what's up?
Hey, Ankita, I know it's 2 a.m., but I just want to have a talk to you about something. I'm like,
yeah,
cool,
I'm worried.
Boundaries. And there's probably a fine line between having really great and warm customer service and them probably thinking that you're their friend as well. And that's probably something that not a lot of people in the industry talk about as well. So that's just a thought. But I want to sort of get into more of the front end perspective and how does a business like yours really actually find the right fit type of cases and customers, because there's going to be thousands and thousands of applications in any given time. But how does a business like yours actually maintain consistent flow of new cases and clients?
I guess we don't have a generic category that we sort of want to get as clients. Every time I get asked a question that, what do we do differently? I have a one-liner that says, we deal with complexities like no one else does, right? Because I know sometimes I would sit to do research for 4 hours on something. Yeah, very funny. I was having this conversation with one of my friends a couple of days ago, and we were talking about this visa category, and I was like, what's the source of this information? And he said, he's been told by 5 different migration professionals. And I was like, no, I need to know a source, because if I go to the department, I can't say that, hey, I was told this by 5 lawyers or 5 agents, right? I need to know, where does it say that in the law? And he's like, I don't know. So I spent 2 hours of my time in trying to find that information. I was like, that's where it is. So when it comes to acquiring clients, I guess when a client comes to us, for me, it's very important to understand what their expectations are and work from that. I'm someone who's very black and white. I always tell them whether we can get them this or we cannot, but it's never guaranteed. People obviously want that guarantee and they're like, I'm happy to pay you more if you can give me guarantee. And I'm like, well, you can pay me 5 times more, but it's not going to give you that result, because we're going to do the same work even if you paid us one time. So I guess it's more about understanding those expectations that clients have of us, and at the same time, understanding how much we can really deliver. So when we take on a case, I like to sit with it, understand how much of what we can do and present it to them. And then I'm very honest about it. I always say to them, like, if I wanted to say things that you wanted to hear, yes, that would be super easy for me to say, yeah, sure, we can do it. And then at the end of the day, say, unfortunately. But the way I work with my clients, I'm very upfront from the beginning. Like, this is a realistic outcome and this is totally like unrealistic outcome, and maybe God can help you, but I can't. So then they're like, okay, and they understand. I think they appreciate it. Sometimes I feel like I am too upfront, and I always say to them, like, sometimes I have clients crying to me on the phone and I'm saying, okay, one of us has to be rational here, and that's going to be me. I understand and I'm sorry about whatever's happened, but I can't be sitting here and crying with you, because I've got to find a solution, right? So, and it's not me being insensitive. It's just me being like really honest, because they've got 2 days left to their visa. I can't be sitting there and crying with them. They're like, hey, this happened, or your partner's left you, or something like that. So I guess these things, I have to understand that what are they expecting from us and what we can realistically deliver in time. And then if we've got an understanding that this is what we can establish for them or acquire for them, then we proceed. So it's never like we're trying to focus on certain categories. We try to take on as much as we can that we're able to deliver that quality. But I also like the client to understand what outcome we're working towards. So it's because there's so many different visa categories and different visa subclasses that we've got to work with the client in terms of what they want and what the realistic outcomes are. Like we had these, I think, 4 visa grants for a family yesterday, and they thought that the visa was going to be for much longer duration. But the departments recently changed their policy, and I was very upfront with them in the beginning that look, we're going to try to do our best work. The chances of you getting the visa is 99%. I'm not saying we won't be able to, but whether we can get you the same visa that you had before isn't a decision that lies with me. So it's just really about having those expectations clear. Yeah.
So you have to re-educate, you have to manage expectations, you have to answer calls at 2 a.m. at the airport. Like, not all heroes wear capes, Ankita. I hope you...
I think I have a cape. I do.
Can you please wear it one time? Please, just at work. Just I'll come and visit you just so I can see the cape. Like, okay. I think there's not enough credit where, and it's funny because when you think about the entire process of migration or immigration, and you never, at least the general public very seldomly think about the process, not only that person goes through, but the actual migration agent goes through it. You go through it in parallel with them almost. Like you're a fractional person who lives in their lives for a little while until something comes up again. Like it's quite fascinating to think about. But on the back of sort of acquiring clients, and you seem to be intentful about who you work with, which is in your industry not so much the case with a lot of other firms. But in terms of understanding your pipeline and the volatility of your work and industry, how do you maintain a consistent pipeline?
Yeah. Look, one of the things is I tell my clients, like you said, that we play a role in their lives. No, I think most of the clients that we're dealing with where the visa is going to take 2 to 3 years, I tell them straight up that we're going to be married at that time. So it's going to be a marriage. So we just have to work like that. I will probably take on more stress than you will. And like I said before, I just tell them that as long as you give me what I need, as long as you give it to me in time, and you are able to present yourself where you are, where I tell you to, we're sorted. So I won't let you take on all the drama. We'll take care of that. So I guess this level of care that we have and the intention, I have not really seen that in our industry that very much. You know, our tutors at uni were all lawyers, and they've got very limited time as well. So in our industry, is very short conversation. So there's not a lot of empathy. There's not a lot of care, because it's not because they don't want to do it. It's because the time's limited. And as you said that, you know, people aren't very intentional about the kind of work that we're taking on and the reputation that we build. So for us, from the beginning, it's been the case that whether it's a smaller case or a very complex case, we're going to make sure that we go above and beyond. And that doesn't pay off in that moment. But then having said that, after 2 years, a client calls me and say, I want, you know, my family to get it through you guys because I've had a great experience. So we build a very strong referral, because we make sure that the client understands that how hard we've worked on it, and they see it through the process. With regards to maintaining pipelines, I guess it's more about trying to see what the policies are coming up and planning well ahead in time. You know, there was a time, I think it was a year ago, there was something to do with education. The policy had changed, so people were really panicky. And I'm a very calm person by nature. So I know this is happening. Like, I can't magically stop an earthquake coming. It's good that I've been told that it's coming in 3 days or 5 days, but then you can at least plan for it. And I think diversity is super important, because if you diversify your operations and you're planning a strategy which is diverse enough, you can sustain and you can build a pipeline. Versus if you do not have that, and if you're just relying on one stream or one channel, whether it's just one single category of visas, and if something major has come there, then of course your business is going to struggle. So I think I've always been this person who's always thought that, okay, what do we need? And I work from the worst case scenario. So that gives me that strategic mindset to make sure that we've got enough diversity in what we're doing today and the seeds that we're planting today. It might not make sense, because I remember, you know, people tell me, why are you investing your time and money? And I'm like, it's okay, you know, just I'm crazy, just leave me to it. And 2 years after, you know, things didn't work out. And then I'm like, okay, at least it's gotten us. Whether we're successful 100%, no, but that's just a part of the business, right? You've got to keep trying to see that you've got a solid pipeline to build a business. Otherwise, if you're relying on just one single category, I think that's going to be a very big struggle.
I think if you've been doing for business longer than 12 months, you'll start to realize that pretty quickly, that one stream, because when I think about pipelines, I think about different streams and I sort of picture it like taps. Eventually that tap will run dry. And if you don't have more taps to facilitate your pipeline, your tank will be very low. And unfortunately, when it comes to front end, what you do now impacts your business 3 months later. So you actually don't know until 3 months later. And you're like, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that. Oh, well, it's already done. Now what do we do for the next 3 months? Like, what is the compounding effort last that long? So from what you said, though, it sounds like you put a lot of focus into your foundations, which means you deliver a great service. Your retention's probably like close to 100%, which is unheard of any other industry, by the way. And that means that you're focusing on the foundations of the business to feel that ripple effect from referrals. The only thing I would want to add to that is like they're all great for business, but it's very uncontrollable. I find that you don't know when it's coming in, you don't know what's going out, and it becomes quite unpredictable. And I think when I speak to other founders in Perth specifically, it seems to be a Western Australian thing where referrals are great. Like I'm happy with just what I'm getting. I'm like, yeah, but how can you run your business with no visibility of what your runway looks like in 6 or 12 months? Like that to me is crazy. But apparently that's how businesses have been running for 30 odd years here. And it's just one of those nuances of running businesses in Western Australia. Have you, and I think when I think about outbound or advertising or paid acquisition, which most other businesses realistically look into to build their pipeline. With migration, it's different because you can't necessarily advertise and you have to be very careful of what you do and do not say, because whether that comes advice, and the industry is much more rigid in compared to outbound methodologies. Have you, as a business, ever really dipped your toe into the advertising bucket for the business?
Yeah, of course. That's one of the ways, especially as a newer business versus the firms who've been established for 10, 20 years. You've got to have that. You've got to spend time, resources on that advertising and the marketing. But I also feel that given that every firm has been focusing so much on it, it's just become, there's just seeing an ad of similar ad, too many of those ads. So what's that doing is that it's not really giving, because if a client has 10 ads showing of different migration companies, so I feel that the leads that are coming from that are not as they used to be, let's say 2 years, 3 years back in the day. You're absolutely right. A lot of the businesses in Western Australia do not rely on the digital side of things still. And that's just, I think we're just behind in time. We just think that, magically something will happen. But we do spend a lot of time, especially with AI coming into the picture, with AEOs happening now. We are spending a lot of resources and time, and got a team working on that at all times. And they come up with, so we would make a decision on what we want to go out, but they would come to us with like, hey, this is happening. They would give us a proposal in terms of maybe we should try that. And then we do get the leads through that. Whether I'd say they're quality leads, the conversion is still below as to what we would see through other channels. But it's definitely a way that a business has to, I guess, in today's world, has to use to fill their pipeline. Otherwise, we're just like working in, I think, 1800s or something like that. Yeah.
I think as well, like with paid acquisition, yes, it can be good, but it can also be more of a headache sometimes, that the ROI simply is not there, because unfortunately with pre-qualification processes, no matter how much you try to pre-qualify them, you get them to fill out forms, you scorecard them, they've seen that a million times before, because if they've seen your ad, most likely, so they've clicked on it to inquire with another agency or another firm or another agent. So they just fill in whatever. And by the time you get to that conversation, it's completely different to what they've actually filled in the form, at least in our experience. So we've had to look at a lot of different other channels and methodologies and just test, because it's really hard to say that, paid ads work or they don't work, or they might work sometimes and sometimes they don't work. But like you mentioned, unless you have an omni-channel approach, I would almost 9 times out of 10 veer my clients away from actually using paid ads as a first initial testing channel because it's expensive. You can't really tell what the metrics are. And I'm very similar to you, Ankita, where I like to know, like, are they female? Are they male? How did they get here? Who referred them? What color underwear do they wear? Because that gives me insight to who they are and do I want to work with that person, right? And that's just something that the metrics from paid acquisition just does not tell you. Just tells you how much money you spent, which is that doesn't help me. But now that you've perfectly segued us and our conversation into the AI space, so let's get nitty and gritty. And maybe it's time you can spill the sauce, as the kids say, as to what do you find when we look at the silos of your business, where has AI been the most impactful since you've implemented it into your business?
Okay. I think AI has definitely saved us a lot of time in terms of whether it's accounting or comparing and all the repetitive tasks. AI has been a game changer and it has surprised me in the ways that, I would have never thought of. There was a point that I was like, something that used to take us, I don't know, like 5 days, it's done in an hour. And I am just astonished. How is that even possible? And it's been incredible. And I think that's just what it's done for us in our business. Like, it's taken out so much of those repetitive things for us and in my day-to-day list to do. And it's given me a lot of time to really focus on the strategy, which is what we were talking about before. You've got to think about what you want to do. And if things don't work out, what do you need to do? Versus before, it wouldn't give us that time. Before, it was also like managing a lot of the things and making sure that everything was compliant. Now we've trained our bots to perform in a way that, they can do 90% of what has to be done. And then you can just do that 10%. And that's just how I think it's been really impactful, and it's been a game changer.
So it's basically handled all of the laborious tasks of a migration agent, which is probably where it actually is a direct correlation of where you're not actually doing your best work as an agent, because you're stuck doing a lot of the paperwork, the data, the analytics, and all of the boring stuff. Let's be real, it's boring. But it does, it directly affects your ability to look after that person and their livelihood because you're busy doing all the other stuff. Which is, I think, in any industry, regardless whether it's migration, regardless if it's in SaaS or whatever it is, I think when people think about AI and implementing an AI in their business, that's always the first topic that comes to mind is, what do I not like? What do I not enjoy doing? And can AI do it for me?
Yeah.
That's always where it starts. Like, have you done any sort of like reports to see what the impact is from a data perspective, to see what is the optimization percentage or ratio since you've implemented those bots to handle all the boring stuff you don't want to?
We're working through that data for sure. But the question that I always ask when we've got to do a task, I'm like, can AI do this? That's my first question. Right. So when my team comes to me like, hey, this needs to be done, my brain thinks, okay, can AI handle this? And should AI handle this? Because in our industry, I can't just say, hey, AI, can you write a submission for me? Like, that's just wrong, right? But number of times we see this, like, AI can handle so much more than we think. So we've got to just really spend a lot of time in figuring out how much AI can handle and how much can we allow it to handle. So we haven't like really gotten a data as such in terms of how much impact and difference in efficiency it's given us. But, just top of my head, I can think about that. It's definitely improved our efficiency and our time management by at least 30%, and I think that's significant because it can really help us do that research, summarize, draft emails, draft responses, double check a lot of information. And with the marketing and the accounting side of things, it's been great. Because with all our GST stuff that we need to do, the accounting, so the reports that we need to do. It's been very smart. Like I think the bookkeeper used to take like a week to do it, and now AI can do it in like half a day. And I'm like, wow. And with accuracy. So the accuracy that you get from it is incredible. So I would say it's something that we're still working towards in terms of how much impact it's made, because we haven't been able to totally integrate AI into our processes. I don't think it's ever possible, but to the extent that it's taken care of in the fields of accounting and financials, and also with the marketing, I think it's been significant.
I think adopting AI intentfully, what it can do is it can plug the gaps of where you're not naturally good at. So you're probably an amazing migration agent, but when it comes to like finance and reconciliation, like I reckon that would be boring. Like you would probably prefer to watch paint dry, because I could not, like, that's not my thing, right? I don't want to do that. I don't enjoy it. I know it has to be done. That's where AI steps in. So I'm very similar in the sense that, can AI handle this? But I actually wanted to challenge you on something where, especially when we think about business growth, typically that means growing headcount, growing business operations, growing customer base, but also growing in revenue, evidently. But we're sort of going through this process now where we're like, do we want to build an AI agent for this, or do we want to hire someone? So I would love to hear about your thought process and how you tackle that conversation, because we're a relatively new business too. We're just shy of 2 years old, but we're right at the crossroads of, do we let AI do this, or do we want to actually support the economy and employ people and teach them, and make sure that we're providing them the skills to go out into the real world. And from our experiences, once we tried to involve humans, it actually became a lot more complicated with less output. So my question is to you is, how do you determine what you delegate to AI and what do you delegate to humans in your team?
Okay. I think the way I look at it is, the goal of AI should not be to replace humans. Okay. I think the goal of AI should be to get speed. So, well, like you said, you've got to grow the business, you've got to grow the pipeline, you've got to try to diversify your operations, grow your headcount, build that revenue, but you've got to get your goal right. So AI can never, and I reiterate, can never replace humans, because AI cannot give you that professional judgment. AI can give you a great report, but there are certain factors that a bot cannot be trained on, because you might be able to train a bot on 1,000 scenarios, and then there's 1,001st scenario that comes up. So I guess you always do need a human for making those professional judgments, but AI can give you that speed that can save that human a lot of time. So I agree with with the entire process of hiring someone, training them. It reuses a lot of your resources. But at the same time, I guess we cannot shy away from AI anymore. It's not something that I can just close my eyes and be like, it's not happening. It's not possible, right? You've got to find those smart people who've been able to upskill themselves with the AI, at least the basic uses of AI. And then you can sort of find that synergy that, maybe 50% of the task can be handled by AI to give you that speed. So now if you needed 3 people, you only need 1, and you need 1 smart one. And I'm not saying you can just, go buy a smart one from a supermarket. Of course, that's not going to happen. But I think it's worth the effort. So for me, I guess I am of a firm belief that AI will not be able to replace humans, but you've got to spend that time to find that individual who can build that great synergy with AI and use AI to give you that desired results.
I think for me is, I'm also in the same category where AI could never replace humans, because it doesn't come with context, experiences that shape those individuals to make those decisions. It just, no matter how much context you give it, it cannot, right? It doesn't have emotion. It thinks it does, but it doesn't. And a lot of the times, whether we want to admit it or not, humans, when we make decisions, there is a component of emotion that comes to it, right? But I think, and I also agree, well, I think that AI is built to make the humans better at what they're doing, rather than replacing that human per se. And it's funny because this actually came up on another episode, but if you are in a position where you are worried that you are going to be replaced by AI, then that probably should light a fire on your backside and be like, maybe I should upskill so that I cannot be replaceable.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I have an old school approach to it. I'm like, look, if you did great work, you shouldn't have anything to worry about.
Look, I think AI will not replace humans, but it will change how we work. I think AI today is the worst that it could be. So it's only going to get better, right? So I don't think it's suddenly going to, take all our jobs. But if your company or our company has incorporated AI and things have changed, that's a sign for you to change how you work. Because, sometimes my team, they're taking 4 hours to do something because they're not yet comfortable with the concept of integrating AI and the way we've trained them. So it's not like, okay, you can't work with AI. It's just almost about educating, because it's uncomfortable, right? People are quite insecure about the fact that, okay, if I take on this, then suddenly I'd become obsolete to the business. That's not really the case. You've got to really see how it can change what we do and how much more productivity and efficiency it can give us. So I think it's definitely a sign for us to upskill, unfortunately, but yeah.
But not only that, because of the innovation of which AI moves and the pace, what you thought you knew about AI last week has probably changed now. So
Yeah.
It's how you use it, how you prompt it, how you give it context, what is the output that you want. But there is no way that you can be on top of AI to a degree where you are unfireable. I don't think that's realistic.
I think you would, and then it's something else would come up, and then you're like, okay, great. We start again. Yeah.
And it's just
100%.
like, yeah. So that's a really interesting thing. But yeah, obviously you've seen that they're all making robots out of China now to do your dishes and fold your laundry and stuff. I'm like, well, that's going too far.
That's very interesting. To be honest, that for me is incredible. I'm like, do that. Do more of that. I would rather have a robot come to my house, do whatever it needs to do, and then just sit in the corner. I would rather do that than having to tell a human being what needs to be done. I'm happy to program this robot. Hey, this is your to-do list to do. So I'm happy for you to do that. But what I think that AI and robots cannot replace is exactly professional judgment, that human component. And a lot of the industries, whether it's law or migration or economics or whatever it is, there is a human component that's involved. And in our industry, there's a very fancy term that we use. It's called compelling and compassionate circumstances. So AI doesn't understand compelling. AI doesn't understand compassion. So I feel like a lot of the times, I get clients to say, oh, AI can write this cover letter for me. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, it can, but should it? Are you trusting it too? Do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm like, yes, AI can be robotic. It can do all those things that, we hate to do. But at the same time, you've got to use it with care. It's a tool, bear in mind. It's not here to replace. Yeah, it's not, we've made it. Humans have made AI. So we've gotten to the point where we can use it to our advantage. We can use it to, upscale us through the research, to improve our efficiency, to sell more essentially. But that quality AI cannot give. And number of times I've seen people being frustrated if you let them deal with a bot is very high, because the bot doesn't understand that one-off scenario that they're coming up with. So they might be putting in a query and the bot isn't trained to respond to that. And it just keeps saying the same things, and it's frustrating, and that's bad. And that you've lost a customer. I've worked with Telstra in the past, and there was one of the biggest companies to take AI on board, and I think 5 years ago or something. And the number of people would come and complain about the fact they weren't happy the way bots were dealing, because they wanted to speak to a human about, an issue that they were facing. And it's not small issues, they're big issues. So, and if you weren't able to service them, give them that quality, you've lost a customer that was with you for 15 years because you chose that a bot should replace a human being, and that's going to be cheap. So I guess it's about that judgment as well. Whether you can use AI in things that do not need that professional judgment, yes, by all means. But I don't think it's there to replace you in totality.
I think there are certain components in the business where it makes sense to trust AI with that part of your business. But I'm a very strong believer that customer facing is not one of them.
Yeah.
And we actually did an exercise recently where we deployed AI bots to answer the phones. This is just exercise purely in a testing environment. And then we had the same receptionist pick up calls at the same time in inbound calls. And anytime from a compliance perspective, there is anyone picking up the phone that is an AI agent, we have to stipulate that it's an AI agent. So we give them the choice whether they want to talk to the agent or do they just want to talk to a human.
Yeah.
And the results were really fascinating. So 8.4 people out of 10 prefer to wait longer to talk to a human.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? Because from the business owner's perspective, they're like, we can service more people, we can answer more inquiries. But the baseline is, and the results tell us, that people still prefer to talk to humans and they're happy to wait however long. We didn't measure that component, but they are still very much waiting to talk to humans. So that gives me hope, because going back to the robot thing, I'm too paranoid to have a robot in my house. Like, I would be thinking, what are you thinking about right now? Like, what is your context? Like, who gave you this instruction? And like, that's where I draw the line. I will never have a robot in my house, because what is it doing when it's not folding clothes? Like, that's too much for me.
It's very interesting. I'll tell you. So I got this call, I think, a couple of times where I know it's an AI and it's saying something, and I was like, I can't be bothered. I just literally said that if you cannot even be bothered to talk to me, just don't call me. Like, if you cannot even have a human being talk to me about something or selling me something, then that to me tells me that you're being really mindful of your resources. And if that's the case, then I don't want to be a customer. And funny enough, we do have actually a robot at home that does the cleaning, and I'll tell you, it's not that smart. Okay, as much as we think that they're super smart and they can take care of everything, they're not. You've really got to program it. So I'm not panicky about having a robot. Like, I wouldn't possibly think that, what are you doing? I think it's just sitting there.
I think
that's
it would
just what I
scare the
think.
daylights out of me, Ankita, personally.
Okay, right. For me, it's just like, okay, it's on charge. We call it Mike because Mike just does random stuff all the time, right? So we've given it a map. This is what you need to do. And it just, I don't know what it does. It just goes to a different corner of the house and it just wants to do something. And my mom gets really paranoid about it. She's like, okay, it's not doing what it's meant to. And I'm like, it's stupid. It's not as smart. You just got to keep telling it. So you've got to have that patience. And look, it comes back to the same thing. Like, with the study that you guys did, I think that's very interesting, because I really don't think AI bots can, or agents can, change or replace sales. Because if someone called me today, like an AI agent, and wanted to sell me stuff, I'm like, nah, it's not even, I'm not even going to continue this conversation. And I think that's probably because we still believe that, that human connection or that human conversation, I think it's in our core. And I don't think that's replaceable. You can replace a human being to do all the reports, because, AI can do them far better and far quicker, by all means. But I think when it comes to certain industries or certain roles, I don't think it's possible. You can't get a bot to build a house. Like, come on now, that's not possible.
Well, funny you say that. There was just a company I saw the other day that had programmed their 3D printer to print concrete. So
my God.
Technically is a robot building houses. And I think there was a small trial in the north of Way, actually.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah. Look, I wouldn't want to live in that. I would be,
no.
I'm like, nah.
Babe, I can barely live in a house with a robot, let alone a house that's built by a robot. So
think about it. Like, no thanks.
Maybe we have trust issues. I don't know. But I wanted to do something fun with you, Ankita, which is something we've never done on a podcast before. But the game is called This or That. I'm sure you've seen it before, right?
Yeah.
Basically, we're just going to rapid fire. So this is funnel-based topics. You're just going to answer with this or that. So what we're going to do is I'm just literally going to rapid fire. You just answer. And then once I get to the end, I'll just say, that's the end. And then I'm just curious to see what your answers will be. Okay. So let me know when you're ready and I'll start. So speed or certainty?
Certainty.
Referral or outbound?
Referral.
Obviously. One big client or 10 small ones?
One big client.
Say no early or find a way to help?
Find a way to help.
Gut call or the data?
Gut call all the way.
Wow. Okay. That surprised me. Draft it yourself or draft it with AI?
Draft it myself, 1,000%.
Voice note or email?
A voice note.
Vibes. Hire or automate?
Ooh.
that came up in our conversation.
Automate.
Under promise or set the real expectation.
Set the real expectations, please. Let's just do that.
I don't know why that's even on there. A client who questions everything or a client who never pushes back?
Of course, the client who never pushes back. That's a no-brainer for a business, right?
Charge for the strategy or charge for the outcome?
Charge for the strategy, because that's not replaceable. And that's very unique.
Strategy is unique because only you can give that strategy.
Yeah.
The old way that works or the new way that might not?
The new way that might not.
Wow, that's so interesting. Because in my mind, I was like, I feel like she's going to answer this, but you end up picking a lot of the opposites that I thought, which is really fascinating. But it tells me in a few of your answers that you're pro innovation, but also very heavily focused on strategy and one-on-one care. So that's really fascinating. That's the first time we ever did that game. But
that's
how did you find that?
I think, just this last answer, it's actually surprised me too, because I wasn't really thinking. I was like, okay, whatever my gut says, I'm going to go with it. And the reason why it shows new that might not work, but it might work too. And that's where innovations come. So if you were always sticking to your old ways and never thought there was a new way of doing things, there would be no innovation in the world. And whilst I believe that you've got to, have those values, morals, and those principles, that's your core, right? But at the same time, innovation can't be beaten. And I think I'm really big on upskilling, growing, innovating, trying to think outside the box. If you're trying to think outside the box, you can't rely on how things are done. A number of times people tell me, oh, it's never been done before. And I'm like, well, that doesn't mean it cannot be done. Yes, I might fail, but I might not. So, I'm just going to give it a try. And at the end of the day, either it's a lesson that you learned or it's a win. And I think both of those outcomes are a win. So that's just my perspective. Yeah.
I like that because verbatim from my former boss, he said, you're either winning or you're learning. And I take that with me everywhere. And I'm like, it's actually a perception shift, right? Because if no one's done it before, it doesn't mean no one's tried. They just weren't successful. But they don't have the same set of skills that you have.
Exactly. Like Dyson failed 5,000 times or more. And today he's, this billion-dollar company. And I'm like, well, if you would have just quit at, okay, it's not been done before, it can't be done, I just don't think. I think you've got to just really that's why I said go with your gut. Because if you're not following your gut, if you're just following data will tell you to stick to the old ways. Because data will tell you, you're being stupid, do not do it. So that's why I have that gray area when I'm like, okay, what do I want to do? I think I want to follow my gut, and the chances of me failing are 50%. Yeah, that's significant, but there's 50% chance of me winning too. So it's like going to uni, right? You go to uni, you pay your tuition. And that's the same thing in life. If you failed, you've learned, and that's a tuition. Your time paid is a tuition paid to learn that lesson, which you wouldn't have learned otherwise. And that's,
I think that's just a different form of currency. Really. Yeah. It's a different form of currency.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating. I thought in that question, I actually thought that you were going to say data.
Nah.
Because I thought you were a super analytical person, but you're more of a humanitarian, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, because see, data tells you, like, in all honesty, when I got into this industry as well, or when I, took that job in finance, like data, or when I quit that job in finance, for example, people were calling me stupid for taking those decisions that I did. But I followed my gut until date, whether it's partnerships, it's growth, expansion, anything, I go with my gut because I think that data can tell me, it can give me a direction for sure. But just because things have not, because data is historic, bear in mind, data isn't futuristic. So it's a past. If I want to make something different, I've got to use that data to give me a sense of direction. So I can't just, just think that anything is doable, but that's given me a direction. And now it's up to me whether I want to stick with that direction or do I want to go with my gut and try to experiment. And I think every time I've tried to do that experiment, for me personally, it's worked. Because I think the kind of effort that goes into it and to try to prove a point, bear in mind, when you're taking a challenge, it's not just, it was done in the past, I can do it again. No, it's like, okay, it wasn't done in the past. I'm probably looking like a total idiot to everyone out here, but I'm just going to do it anyway, right? So So yeah, I guess that's just what my choices have been in life. So
But
yeah.
it tells me that you've trusted your gut in the past and it's paid dividends. That's why you continue to do it from a psychology perspective, right? And
I'm big
maybe
on psychology, bear in mind. I'm big on psychology. And I see I have a spiritual element to me too. So that
yeah,
helps me to trust my gut more.
yeah,
And I know as an entrepreneur, it's not always about going with that gray area, which is your gut. But I guess it's just you've got to fine tune it where you can and where you cannot. But most important decisions in my life, I think I try to ask my gut, hey, what's up?
Hey, it's your girl calling.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, Ankita, I got one last question for you before we wrap up. But if there was a migration agent who just went out on their own and they have struggled to acquire new cases and new clients, what would your piece of advice be to them?
Okay, I think it's a very intimidating industry. As a female, I think that I was quite headstrong and I still am. So for me, I don't really take on negative stuff onto myself. I think people just need to be patient. And one thing as a new migration agent is you need to stop comparing yourself to someone who's been in this game for 20 years. You can't compare yourself with them. You've got to compare your stage one to their stage one. I think the biggest mistake that people are doing today is comparing their stage one to someone's stage 57. And that suddenly makes you feel that you're behind. I think one thing I always say to people is upskill, learn, and try to take on more challenges. Don't just go for easy stuff. It will make you money. Okay. It's not that if you take on easy stuff, yes, it will make you money, but there's no differentiation. Versus if you really try to go for, even if it's one case that you're working with, make sure you give it your best and make sure you know that you've given your best, right? So if you are able to do that, yes, you've served that client, but you've added more expertise and experience to yourself, which would have probably taken you 5 years of experience. So that one case alone has given you so much. And in compounding effect, you'd see that 10 years, if you keep practicing on this principle, it's given you better results. So my advice is just be patient, have that conviction. If it's not working, that's fine. Like the percentage of conversion in businesses, like just go study that. Sometimes it's less than 5%. So even if you're making 100 phone calls and only 5 people are even converting to a consultation, that's fine. You've got to stick with your guts, do what you do the best. Don't compare yourself and be honest. Don't ever overpromise something that you cannot deliver. I always say to my clients, I would rather underpromise you and overdeliver than overpromise you and then look like an absolute clown. I don't do that. So I guess, yeah, yeah. And I think it's people want it faster. That's one of the biggest problems. People want it now. That's not how businesses are built. I speak to people. In fact, I was talking to my cousin the other day. He's like, oh, well, this person is on level this and has this and this. I was like, that's after 10 years. You haven't started. You just got to calm down. So, and then people think that I'm just being too cruel. It's not the case. I'm just giving you a hard truth, right? So be patient and trust yourself. Exactly. So I'm this, odd one out, always giving harsh advices to people. Apparently. I know. Yeah. 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 And that's the same with my clients too. Sometimes I tell them, they're like, oh, this is what I want. This other agent told me this. I was like, I don't care what you've been told. I'm sorry. I really don't. I am going to stick with what I'm telling you. And one of my favorite lines is, what I'm telling you today is the same thing I'm going to tell you 5 years down. After 5 years, I'm not going to suddenly change my mind and turn into a different person. So I'm going to work with you on the strategy and I'm going to be equally responsible throughout the way, right? So I don't care what you've heard in the past or whatever happened. I'm just focusing on what we have today and what we build from here. So I guess that's very important, where I am being that bad person and telling them things that they wouldn't necessarily hear from people. But that's just my personality. I'd rather be honest, right? 1,000. Sorry, what do you mean 100? 1,000 years behind. Yeah. 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 I have a pet question I ask my clients. I use that with my family too. I always say, do you want to hear the truth or do you want to hear something that sounds nice? And it's like a rapid fire question. So the most 99% of the time people say, I want to hear the truth. And I'm like, well, you chose it, right? So now I can't be nice. I guess I'm going to present it nicely, but it's going to be the truth. You just chose it. So, for me, yeah, it was your choice. So I guess it's sometimes my brother tells me all the time, he's like, you're just too straight to the point for this world. And I always tell him, like, yeah, but I think we need more people like that. Let's just not beat around the bushes. I could waste somebody's 4 hours trying to just do ringa ringa roses, but might as well just tell them how it is. We wrap it up in 20 minutes. They have clarity of what they need to do, and happy days for everyone. They can go and have, I don't know, a beer if they want to have, or go to a dance class or do Pilates. I don't know, whatever, right? So I guess, yeah, I think I'm someone who's quite straight. And I think I've grown to be this person now. Yeah, I do care about people, but I'd rather be honest than just say things for the sake of it. Thank you, Jenny. I've had a great time. I think it's been a fun conversation, and definitely we've found common grounds on multiple areas. It's been great, and thank you. Thanks for having me.